My father-in-law, Harold said, I'll be going to every doctor's appointment to approve medical decisions. When I argued, he showed me a power of attorney form with Michael's signature on it. I was furious and made a call. The next time he showed up at the doctor's office, security stopped him. Harold has always been controlling. He doesn't just give advice, he tries to run everything. He thinks his opinions should be followed no matter what. And if you disagree, too bad. Michael grew up with him always around, making decisions for him. It took a long time for Michael to start standing up for himself. But just when we thought things were getting better, Harold did something even worse. A few months ago, Michael wasn't feeling well. He was tired and out of energy, but he didn't think much of it. When the doctor found some worrying results, more appointments were scheduled. We were stressed. Michael leaned on me for support, but then Harold decided he needed to step in. At first, it was just annoying. He kept calling for updates and telling Michael what tests to get or which doctors to avoid. He even suggested some unproven treatments instead of actual medicine. Then Harold showed up at one of Michael's appointments. I walked in, expecting a quiet wait, but saw Harold sitting there like he belonged. I'm here to make sure things are done right, he said. I was shocked. Michael and I have this covered, I told him, but he just shook his head like I was clueless. No, dear, I will be making the decisions. You don't have the authority. Excuse me? I was angry, but didn't want to make a scene. I pulled Michael aside and asked if he had invited his dad. Michael looked embarrassed. No, he just showed up. I didn't think he'd actually do this. That should have been the end of it, but Harold didn't leave. He followed us into the room. When the nurse asked Michael about his symptoms, Harold answered. When the doctor asked about his history, Harold spoke up before Michael could. I looked at Michael, hoping he'd tell his dad to stop, but he just let him take control. That's when I realized Harold thought he had the right to make these decisions. After the appointment, I confronted Harold. You don't get to make Michael's medical decisions, I said. He's an adult. Leave him alone. Harold smiled smugly. Oh, but I do, he said, then showed me a power of attorney form with Michael's signature. I felt sick. This gives me the right to make medical decisions, Harold said. I'll be at every appointment from now on. I couldn't believe it. I grabbed the paper and read it. Michael's name and signature were there, but it didn't look right. I showed it to Michael. Did you sign this? I asked. He looked at it and turned pale. I never signed this. Harold's smile wavered. This is your signature, he said, trying to sound convincing. Michael shook his head. I didn't sign it. I wouldn't have agreed to this. Harold laughed. You must have forgotten. We talked about it, and you agreed. Michael clenched his fists. No, I didn't. Harold shrugged. Well, it's done now. I was furious. No, it's not. I took the form home and studied it. The signature looked off. It didn't match Michael's usual writing. I took a picture of it and sent it to my lawyer, then called the hospital's legal department to ask what could be done. They said they would handle it. A few days later, when Harold showed up for another appointment, security stopped him. He tried to act like he owned the place, but 2 guards stepped in front of him. Sir, you're not allowed to be here, one said. Harold was stunned. What do you mean? You don't have legal authority over the patient's medical decisions, the other guard said. You need to leave. Harold looked shocked. I have power of attorney. The guard flipped through some papers. Not anymore, he said. I stood by watching. Michael stepped up beside me and finally looked his father in the eye without backing down. Leave, Dad, Michael said. Harold glared at him, anger burning in his eyes. You're making a mistake. Michael didn't flinch. No, you did. Harold opened his mouth to argue, but the security guard stepped closer. He clenched his jaw, his fists tightening. Finally, he turned and walked away. You'd think Harold would learn from that, but people like him don't give up easily. At first, everything seemed calm, too calm. We almost thought we had won. Harold stopped showing up uninvited. He wasn't calling or texting all the time. But then the bills started arriving. One afternoon, I opened a bill for a specialist Michael had never seen. At first, I thought it was a mistake, but then I saw Harold's name listed as the referring party. I checked the date. It was after Harold had been banned from the doctor's office. I called Michael immediately. Did you book an appointment with this doctor? Michael looked confused. No, why? I sent him a picture of the bill. He frowned. That's not even my handwriting. I checked our insurance records and saw multiple appointments had been booked in Michael's name without his knowledge. Harold was still trying to make medical decisions from a distance. I grabbed my keys. I wasn't going to let this go. I went to the specialist's office with printed copies of the fake referrals. I walked up to the receptionist. "My husband never booked this appointment," I said, trying to stay calm. "I need to know who authorized this." She looked at the paperwork, then back at me, confused. "It was referred by Harold." "Of course it was," I said, angry. "He has no right to make medical decisions. This is fraud." Her eyes widened. "Oh, we didn't know." I showed her the email from our lawyer. "He lost power of attorney weeks ago. He has no legal authority." She nodded quickly. "I'll talk to the doctor. Please wait." She disappeared into the back. When she returned, she seemed uneasy. "The appointment's been canceled," she said, "and I'll make sure nothing gets scheduled under his name again. But your father-in-law called this morning. He said he would be attending the appointment with Michael." I clenched my fists. Harold was still trying to control Michael's care. "If he calls again, tell him this. I know what he's doing, and I won't let it happen," I said. She nodded. "Got it." But I knew Harold wouldn't give up. A few weeks later, we got a letter from our insurance company. It said, "Due to recent updates to your policy, your emergency contact and secondary decision maker have been changed." I froze. Michael read over my shoulder. "What does that mean?" I turned the page. Harold's name was listed as the secondary decision maker. I was livid. Michael immediately called the insurance company. "I never approved this," he said. "Who made these changes?" The representative hesitated. "We got a request from your father." Michael and I exchanged looks. "How?" I asked. "He has no legal authority." The rep replied, "It was processed before the power of attorney was revoked, but I can change it back." "Do it," Michael said without hesitation. We spent the next hour checking every document to make sure Harold's name was removed from everything. By the end, I was furious. I didn't know how Harold had managed to sneak this past us, but now I knew he wasn't done. He had lost control, and he was desperate to regain it. Michael and I agreed. No more defense. We called a lawyer and set up all the legal protections. We even changed the locks because I knew Harold might try anything. Then one evening, he showed up at our house. It was late, too late for a casual visit. We were watching TV when the doorbell rang. Michael frowned. "Are we expecting anyone?" "No," I said. I checked the doorbell camera, and there he was, Harold, standing on the porch, hands in his pockets, waiting. I didn't open the door. "What do you want?" I asked. He smiled at the camera. "We need to talk," he said. "Let me in." "No," I said right away. His smile didn't fade. "I'll wait." And he did. For 2 hours, he just stood there waiting. Michael was getting anxious. "Should we call the police?" he asked. "I don't want to escalate things," I said. "Not yet." We kept watching him through the camera. He wasn't leaving, just standing there, staring at the door. At one point, he pulled out his phone and started dialing. Michael's phone rang. He ignored it. Then mine rang. Then the house phone. He kept calling, over and over. Finally, he gave up. We watched as he turned and walked away. Harold wasn't just angry anymore. He was desperate and dangerous. I knew this wasn't over. He had already crossed so many lines, but every time we thought we had shut him out, he found a new way to push back in. A few days after the fake 911 call, I got a knock at the door. 2 police officers stood outside, and my stomach dropped. "Ma'am, we received a welfare check request for Michael. Is he home?" Michael stepped into view. "I'm right here." The officers nodded. "Your father called us. He said he hasn't been able to reach you. He's concerned for your safety." I laughed loudly, the sound cold and bitter. Michael's face twisted with anger. "We're fine," I said. "He's lying." The officers exchanged a look. "Mind if we come in just to confirm?" Both Michael and I knew refusing would only make things worse, so we let them in. They did a quick sweep of the house, no signs of distress, no reason for concern. One of them sighed. "Sorry about this. False reports happen." We knew exactly what this was. Harold had figured out how to weaponize the police. He could send them to our door at any time, and now he had. And it worked. It felt like he had learned a dangerous new trick. Michael ran a hand through his hair, looking defeated. This isn't going to stop, is it? I exhaled slowly, the weight of it all settling in. No, I said firmly, but we're going to end it. Harold wasn't just targeting Michael's medical decisions anymore. He was trying to control our entire lives, and I had a feeling things were about to get worse. That night, we were sound asleep when the pounding on the front door startled us awake. It was 1:30 a.m. Michael shot up, confused and groggy. What the hell? I checked the doorbell camera. 3 police officers stood outside, flashing lights in the darkness. My stomach tightened. I answered the intercom. Can I help you? Ma'am, we received a 911 call from this address. The caller reported an ongoing domestic disturbance. My blood ran cold. There's no emergency here, I said, my voice firm. We didn't call 911. The officer's face remained neutral, but I could tell he wasn't convinced. Ma'am, we need to confirm that everyone inside is safe. Michael and I exchanged looks. We knew we had no choice but to let them in. The officers split up, one staying with me in the kitchen, while the other spoke with Michael. Do you feel safe in your home? The officer asked me. I clenched my jaw, fighting the urge to snap. Yes. Are you sure there's no emergency? He pressed. I nodded. There's no emergency. Do you have any idea who might have made the call? He asked. I didn't hesitate. Harold. The officer's eyes flickered with recognition. He had heard that name before. After asking a few more questions, the officers confirmed there was no emergency and left. But the message was clear. Harold had used 911 against us, and this wasn't just harassment anymore. This was dangerous. Then, just when we thought things couldn't get worse, Michael's job became the next target. He walked into his office one morning to find something was off. People were staring. His boss looked tense, and then HR called him in. What's going on? Michael asked as he sat down. The HR manager folded her hands. We received an anonymous email claiming that you've been using illegal substances at work. Michael froze. What? She slid a printed copy of the email across the desk. The lies were thick and venomous. It claimed Michael had been showing up to work intoxicated. It said he had been caught with pills in his office, and it even suggested that his erratic behavior was due to a mental health breakdown. Michael's hands trembled with anger. This is a lie. His boss believed him, but HR had to do an internal review. When Michael came home that night, furious, I knew exactly who was behind it. Harold had gone after Michael's career now, trying to ruin him in any way he could. We need to end this right now, I said, already pulling up the lawyer's number. The next morning, we went straight to our lawyer and filed for a restraining order. The fraudulent medical claims, the fake police reports, and now this, Harold had gone too far. But then Harold struck again. 2 days later, we received a letter from his lawyer. Michael opened it, read the first few lines, and went pale. What? I asked, my stomach twisting into a knot. He handed me the letter. Harold was suing us for elder abuse. He claimed we had been financially exploiting him, neglecting him, and emotionally abusing him by cutting off contact. He even had witnesses lined up, his new wife and some distant relatives we hadn't seen in years. Michael ran a hand through his hair, looking devastated. He's trying to flip the narrative. I sat down on the couch, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. He wants to put us on defense. If this goes to court, it could drag on for months. Michael buried his face in his hands, clearly broken. He's going to make us look like the bad guys. I wasn't going to let that happen. The hearing was set for 2 weeks later. By the time we walked into the courtroom, I had every single piece of evidence ready. The forged power of attorney highlighted. The fake medical appointments documented. The insurance fraud timestamped. The police reports submitted. Harold sat across from us, smug, confident he was about to win. But our lawyer stood up and immediately ripped his case to shreds. You claim you were financially exploited? Our lawyer asked. Can you explain why you were the one committing insurance fraud? Harold's face twitched. You claim you were emotionally abused, yet you called the police under false pretenses, attempted to sabotage your son's job, and even committed medical fraud. Harold's lawyer shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Then we pulled out the body cam footage from the fake 911 call. The judge watched it in silence as Harold's jaw clenched, the weight of his actions sinking in. Finally, our lawyer delivered the final blow. We are countersuing for harassment, defamation, and fraud. Harold's face went ghost white. The entire courtroom fell silent, and I could almost hear his world crashing down around him. This wasn't just about a restraining order anymore. This was about taking him down for good. Harold thought he had everything under control. For years, he had been manipulating Michael, setting up boundaries, and forcing his way into decisions that weren't his. But this time, he went too far. He thought filing a lawsuit would scare us. But he didn't realize we weren't afraid anymore. In the end, his own arrogance was his undoing. We knew Harold's case was weak, but we were ready for battle. By the time the next hearing came, our lawyer had built a strong defense. Harold had forged a power of attorney, faked medical appointments, tried to control our insurance, used 911 against us, and sabotaged Michael's job, all while claiming we were the ones who had abused him. The courtroom was packed. Harold had brought his new wife, some distant relatives, and a few friends to watch. He wanted a spectacle, but he didn't realize he was about to become the main attraction. Harold's lawyer went first. He stood up and said something ridiculous. "Your Honor, my client is a loving father who has been unfairly cut off from his son's life. He's a victim of emotional neglect and manipulation by his daughter-in-law." I couldn't help but laugh. The judge shot me a look, but I didn't care. Michael squeezed my hand. He looked calm, but I could feel his tension. This was his moment. When it was our turn, our lawyer didn't hold back. "Your Honor, my clients have been harassed, stalked, and manipulated by the plaintiff. I'm here to show that this lawsuit is just a desperate attempt to keep control." Then he laid out the evidence: the forged power of attorney, emails showing Harold made medical appointments in Michael's name, insurance records proving he changed Michael's emergency contacts, the 911 call transcript from the fake domestic violence report, and a report from Michael's job showing Harold's attempt to destroy his career. Harold's lawyer looked pale. The judge flipped through the documents, silent. Our lawyer spoke again. "I'd also like to call a witness." The doors opened, and in walked Harold's new wife. She looked nervous, like she hadn't slept in days. When she saw Harold, she stiffened, but she didn't sit next to him. She sat next to us. The courtroom buzzed with surprise. "I have something to say," she said, her voice shaking. "I can confirm Harold forged the power of attorney." Harold's face went red. "What are you doing?" he hissed. She ignored him. "I saw him do it. He practiced Michael's signature. He told me it was the only way to control everything. He said Michael couldn't make his own medical decisions, so he had to force it." Michael exhaled sharply. Harold's lawyer looked horrified. The judge leaned forward. "Are you saying you were aware of fraudulent activity?" the judge asked. "Yes," she said, swallowing hard. Harold slammed his fist on the table. "You traitor." The judge banged his gavel. "Control yourself, Mr. Patterson." The tension in the room was thick. Harold turned to his wife, his face red with rage. "You knew this would happen if you crossed me." She flinched. Michael stood up. "You've controlled people your whole life, Dad, but not anymore." Harold didn't say anything. For the first time, he looked scared. His world was falling apart, and he had nowhere to hide. The judge ruled in our favor. Harold's lawsuit was dismissed, and we won our counter-lawsuit for harassment and fraud. The forged power of attorney was officially recognized as evidence of fraud. Harold was hit with legal fees, a permanent restraining order, and potential criminal charges for forgery. But the best punishment? His entire family saw him for who he really was. His wife filed for divorce a month later. His friends cut ties with him after learning the truth. Even Michael's distant relatives apologized for believing him. Harold lost everything. For the first time, he had no control over anything. A few months later, Michael and I sat on our porch drinking coffee. He seemed lighter, like a weight had been lifted off his shoulders. I reached for his hand. "You okay?" He nodded. "I am now." I squeezed his hand. After everything we'd been through, we finally had peace. Harold spent his whole life bullying and manipulating people, but in the end, his actions destroyed him. And the best part, we never had to stoop to his level. We let him dig his own grave, and now we were finally free.